if we're good enough to figure out vital signs with movement, and I don't think we've figured them all out, but I think we're way closer than we were, and I think we've got some really actionable tools. But if we do have those vital signs for movement, what do we do with them? The second principle can tell us that. Protect before you correct, and correct before you develop. What does that actually mean? Well, I got to protect you from situations where your feedback is inappropriate. I got to correct what I can to get you up to that level. And then development is pretty much the said principle. This is what physical education is about. This is what sports performance is about. This is what fitness programming is about. We assume when we develop you that your operating system is intact and your hardware is good to go. Your hardware is both taking action on movement, but it's also collecting information. And a lot of people think when we get a little bit OCD, say about ankle mobility or hip mobility, they think we're just doing that for biomechanics. Well, of course, when your ankle moves better and your hips move better, your biomechanics are better. But there's a whole nother thing that happens. When your ankle and hips move better, your perception is better. What perception are we talking about? Well, your acceleration, your deceleration, the change in surface, the change in tilt of the ground, the momentum, all this information that your foot actually collects and sends up to the brain, if it has to run through a stiff ankle or a stiff hip, it won't get there with the integrity of the original signal. So when we clean up movement or have a vital sign that says that ankle needs to move a little bit more, we're not just saying that because we've got these protractors and a biomechanist needs 2 more degrees. We're saying, listen, you're not hearing the ground as clearly as you can hear it when your foot hits the ground. And maybe that's why we're getting valgus collapse. Maybe that's why we're landing so hard, because we've got to amplify the perception simply to get the information we need to make the next best move. So when you see things like that vital sign, you can't process as quick or as clean if you don't have those vital signs from a sensory standpoint, and you can't take action nearly as good through a biomechanical output. But what are we actually protecting here? Well, you've got behaviors that aren't good. If your leg raise is bad or your squat is bad, then I can't have you doing a lot of loaded hip hinging or a lot of loaded squatting. What good can come of it? You don't have any good feedback loop. You can't do anything with the information. All you can do is compensate. So I'm going to protect you from the behaviors where you have a lack of integrity and feedback isn't doing you any good. And I'm going to give you an example of that. You ever had somebody who continues to round their back in a deadlift? See if you can talk them out of it. Most of you can't. And that's the whole point. Or if you can, you've wasted most of their learning potential energy trying to correct a movement that could have easily been corrected had you just got a little more hip mobility, a little more trunk stability first. They can't hear what you need, so they continue rounding the back even though you're saying don't round your back. Protect them. Don't even let them do the behavior, because verbal correction or visual demonstration still can't get them there quickly. But if you can show somebody one thing and they can clean it up quickly, that's more in a correction. And what drives that? Perception. If I change your perception of what's going on, if I amplify the thing, if you don't stabilize good on one hip, I'm going to put you on the other hip in half kneeling and show you how well you stabilize in half kneeling. And here comes a surprise. I'm going to say, hey, do that on the other side. You're going to be really wobbly, and I'm going to ask you to explain to me why. Your hips move normally, but maybe they don't process normally. Maybe they don't react normally on one side. So my point is, I've got to amplify what you're feeling. That's a corrective drill. Our little awkward corrective movements when we make you roll to one side but you can't roll to the other, that's us amplifying your perception so you can change your behavior. Nobody changes their behavior because you tell them to. Most people change their behavior because you change the way they perceive a situation and show them a much more efficient or effective path. So, some behaviors are so bad, we just must cease them to protect you. Some behaviors are out of sync with what you actually should be doing, but we can amplify your perception with a corrective drill or a corrective experience, and we can change your behavior by changing the way we input the information, constricting the information, amplifying or magnifying the information. So that leaves us with develop. Listen, when we get to development, the organism is behaving well and perceiving well. They're passing their screens and they're demonstrating their vital signs. So when we get to development, I need you to engineer an environment that helps people get into their flow state. That's the one drive that's going to keep us going back for more of a certain type of movement. right? You don't have to beg skateboarders to practice. They do it automatically. Why? Because they like skateboarding. So you got to have a little bit of something you like in that training day. That's going to drive it, not the sets and reps or workout sheet. You got to love moving, and we got to create a way so you can move and benefit, have a practice, a training effect, but also that playful part. But we engineer your environment to sort of amplify that skill challenge ratio. Every day you're going to get a little bit more. We're going to make sure your state of readiness is good, but I'm going to be engineering the environment to compress everything I need to develop in you, and I can't develop everything at once. I've got to know where my weak links, bottlenecks, and previous problems have been. Well, they're right here. So we're going to double time these things and make sure your behaviors and perceptions that were once broke are always standing up to consistency and pressure. So right here at development, we quit focusing on the organism and we really start engineering a better environment. And sometimes that's deleting an exercise that I can't measure is making a difference. And that's been the most refreshing thing in my career. Permission to delete crap from your programming that I can't measure is making a difference, which is why I'm obsessed on measuring things. Because if I can delete the things that aren't changing you, I can amplify and intensify the things that I can measure are changing you.
For more information, visit functionalmovement.com.